Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's TD Engine webinar. My name is Jim. I'm the VP of Product for TD Engine. Joining with me is today's main presenter, Joe. Joe is our newly joined solutions architect for TD Engine. Joe has about 20 years of experience in software development. So today's webinar title is Building Real-Time Dashboards with Grafana, and this is part of our Time Series Database Essential Series webinar series. And we've been hosting that weekly sort of educational and technical webinar since about 2 weeks ago, and we will continue doing that for the next few months. So if you want to learn more about time series database and how to connect that with different analytical tools or visualization tools, how to set up clustering configurations to edge cloud configuration, please feel free to check more topics on our TD Engine webinar page. Just search TD Engine and webinar on Google. You will find our page, and you can sign up for any webinar that you're interested in. And these are targeted to be more educational, so it's definitely has a lot of hands-on exercises and demos and things like that. If that's what you like, definitely stay tuned to our webinar series. And at the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A session. So if you have any questions regarding today's webinar or TD Engine itself, please type it down in the chat window. We'll try to get them answered either during the Q&A session or later following the webinar. So at this point, I'm going to turn the speaker over to my friend, Joe.
Thanks, Jim. Excited to be here and doing my first webinar with TD Engine and talking about something that I am excited about, which is Grafana, something that I like to use and we'll be talking about today. So a little bit of an overview about myself. I'm a software developer and solution architect, and put together a solution today showing the basics of how you can use Grafana with a time series database. There will be a little bit of a demo and then actually a take-home thing that you can take to try this at home. So what is Grafana? It's an open source data visualization and monitoring tool that allows you to query and visualize data from multiple sources. You can create your own customizable dashboards with a variety of options for visualization, which I'll show you in a second. But you can also connect it to many different types of data sources like TD Engine, Prometheus, MySQL, or Elasticsearch. And it has its own UI framework. So some of the key components in Grafana are the dashboards themselves. Each one is a separate page, which are made up of different panels showing you gadgets, gauges, or different graphs. And of course, you'll have queries that define how you're retrieving your data, which you configure from data sources. Grafana also has an alerting capability built into it. What kind of visualizations would you build with Grafana? Well, it's ideal for time series charts, very visible gauge charts. One of my favorites, heat maps, which we'll take a look at today. And you can also just display tables as well. So here's an overview of the solution that we'll be looking at today. We have a data source, which is really just a Node.js script that is simulating a solar farm of solar panels collecting sun rays. This is going to be fed into a TD Engine database via WebSocket connection, which will then be pushed into or pulled into Grafana via the official TD Engine Grafana plugin for visualization. So now we will switch to the actual code. So this is the project that I have running, and this is based on a Docker compose file that is running the solar farm script that generates the data. It's also running a TD Engine open source instance here locally on my laptop, which you can see TD Engine going by here. And it's also running Grafana. So I have the three pieces from the diagram before all running locally via Docker. And from that, now I can share my browser. So, one second, share. Try that again. So here is TD Engine open source. This would be the second block from that diagram. I have TD Explorer, which is the TD Engine UI that you can use for viewing data in TD Engine. And here you can see the structure of the data, or the tables and the super tables. So the solar farm data is being fed in. There's about 300 different solar panels that the script is generating data for. And every 10 seconds, it's adding a record for each solar panel, which you can see here. And with TD Engine, we have a one device per table methodology that makes the data storage really efficient. And you can see that here, how it's stored, but each table has the same structure from the super table. So this is TD Engine open source, which is feeding data into Grafana. Now, when you're using Grafana, the first thing you'll have to do is set up a data source. I have TD Engine configured here, but we'll look at the options really quick. So it's connected to the local TD Engine that's running via Docker. And I have a password set, and I'll just run test just to make sure it's working. It is working. And so from there, I can go right into building a dashboard for my solar farm. So I'll add a visualization, choosing the TD Engine data source. And for my first one, I'll add a gauge to see how much solar is coming into solar farm A. There's 3 solar farms, solar farm A, B, and C. And so for this one, I will put in the query here for solar farm A, and also set, now we can see the number is rendering. I'll add a title for that here, and also set the gauge a little bit better to visualize the data. So in order to do that, I can choose the unit of measurement. So this is energy, and I'll set it to watts. So it's 37 kilowatts. And I also need to set a min and max for range for the gauge. So I'll set this to 30 and 40. And then we can color it by setting a minimum base threshold, which is red. Let's say if it goes below our base, we want it to be red. And then I'll add a yellow zone at 33 and a green zone at 35 for our gauge. We want to hit it, make sure that it's over 35, let's say, but not over 40. So now we have our gauge, which I'll go back to the dashboard, and I actually have 2 more solar farms. So what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this one again, and then I can just adjust the query to pull in from site B, where site equals solar farm B, change the label here as well and go back. And now we can see these two numbers are different because they're coming from two different sources. And I'll do the same for solar farm C. Oops. I just want to go back to the dashboard to verify it. Numbers are all different because they're query different. All right. Well, so these gauges look nice, but we can also add in time series data. So let's add in another panel. And for this one, the default is time series. I do have my query here, which I'll add in. So what this is doing is pulling the total power output and summing it, or pulling an average and bringing it together for our total power output here. And we can also group by various fields if we need to. But what if you wanted to modify your data and see how it looked in different ways? What if I only want to look at one solar farm? For your dashboard, you can create variables. And so for the variable, you may need to pull this as a query itself. So I want to query what are the different solar farms that are available. So I'm going to add a variable to my dashboard called sites and query for what are the distinct different names of sites that might show up. And here it's showing me a preview of the values. And so when I run the query, we preview it. And now I have a drop down on my dashboard to be able to filter. Now I haven't connected this to anything yet, but I can use this now as a variable in another visualization. So we talked about heat maps earlier. I will add a heat map. So here we choose a heat map visualization. And make sure that we have the site variable defined in the query. This is the right query here. 1 second.
And it's just the standard SQL queries, right?
Correct. These are standard SQL queries. And this is, actually, no, this one should be a time series, excuse me. So this time series, which has the sites variable in it. So there you'll see a couple things that don't look like SQL, which are these $signs here, which represent the to and from time range, like magic variables, and then also the sites, which is the variable we defined up here. And so when I go back to the dashboard here, when I change this, it's now going to show me the temperature and ambient temperature and wind speeds that were observed at the different locations. So to see what this, let's see, we can also add one more heat map. As I said, we would do that. Which would be this query here. And we'll change this to a heat map. And it's not rendering quite correctly until I have it group by site. And this collates the data correctly and shows us what a heat map of how much energy was produced at each one of the solar farms. So this is a roll-up of grouping by each solar farm to show a heat map here with our faked data. So I've now put together a gauge, a heat map, a time series panel, all by hand. I can show you what, I will save this, but save dashboard, won't let me save, but we'll show you a pre-baked dashboard using all the same data. So this is all coming from the data generator, the Node.js data generator. And you will be able to put this together yourself using the Docker Compose with the instructions. And so all of this, I put this together as a on a repository in GitHub, which you can check out. Our time series essentials repository with the first folder is called Grafana. And I have some instructions here on how to bring it up. You will have to have Docker installed, but after that, you just run Docker Compose up, which will grab and build all the necessary images in order to run it. The only other step would be configuring the TD engine to Grafana, but the plugin is actually included and installed automatically through Docker Compose. All right. So did we have any questions that came through, Jim?
Yeah, so is that it for the demo for today?
Yeah, those were all the parts of the demo that I had showing the different construction of the different visualization types and how to set this up with Docker.
All right. So again, if you have any questions for the demo, the functions, or TD engine, please type it down in the chat window. And just as Joe was showing us, so what Joe is putting together is essentially the entire process from data generation to managing those data in TD engine and then visualizing that in Grafana, right? So that is, what this project is about. And if you have any questions, let us know. So Joe also put together, like he mentioned, a Docker Composer for all these components. So we're using open source only, where we're not using currently any cloud version or enterprise version. So this is open source only. You can run that on your computer with, you don't have to have any, licensing restrictions, anything like that. We want you to try it out. If you have your own data source, for example, once you have this whole thing set up, you can replace this solar farm data simulator with your own data source and get that into TD engine. And potentially you will also be able to visualize or create your own dashboards with your specific use case or scenario. But we want to give you this structure as a baseline for you to start moving forward with, right? That's why Joe created this very nice Docker Composer for this demo for you to try out. And all right, so let me see. We have a few questions coming in. The first question is the Grafana plugin available for open source version of TD Engine as well? Joe, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so the plugin is available for the open source version of TD Engine, and it works with the cloud version as well. We could have done this whole demo with the cloud version of TD Engine and the cloud version of Grafana, but the plugin, it's the same plugin whether you're using cloud or open source or enterprise on the Grafana end.
Cool. Next question. Is it possible to have a cloud configuration for today's setup?
So yes, so you could have the same setup in cloud using some very similar technology. You would just replace the TD Engine Docker endpoint with the cloud endpoint and API keys.
Cool. And Zenit asked the question, is there any bottleneck when pairing TD Engine in a Docker with Grafana? Can I stream one, two of data daily? Oh, when Zenit, are you referring to, can you stream 1 terabyte of data daily? Can you specify that more clearly, please? So compared to sort of cloud configuration compared with the Docker configuration, Joe, do you see any potential bottleneck in the performance or the latency, anything like that with our setup?
It depends on the setup, ultimately on the machine. I don't think Docker is going to run as fast as, let's say, the cloud setup, which has potentially more horsepower, but I'd say it depends really on the machine and how much resources you can throw at Docker, because you can throw a lot of resources at Docker if you want. And so I think it depends really on your setup there. But
Absolutely, yes. It depends on the hardware configuration you can allocate to the Docker to your instances. And TD Engine does handle large scale data size very well. We have a lot of users in the industrial space or even in the high frequency trading space ingesting like petabytes of data every year, and TD Engine is able to handle that with no problem at all. We're very good at scalability. Another gentleman was asking, is there any report system like notifications to emails that I assume he can set up within TD Engine?
Yeah, TD Engine or Grafana.
Or Grafana, yes.
Yeah, notifications and alerts based on thresholds.
Yeah, so the answer is yes to that question, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, if you have it properly configured with the right, email provider and all that, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's also possible, like Joe mentioned, in the in TD Engine we have something called data subscription and pairing. So that's a pub/sub mechanism. You can easily share data with any outside sources and outside databases. And we also have stream processing available just within TD Engine. You can do real-time data aggregation and save all those aggregated data in real time to a separate table. And we have some other tutorials showing you how you can pair that with you can pair stream processing with data subscription and create a notification to like an email or your cell phone. It can be a text message to your phone, it can be an email to your inbox. If a certain value exceeds a certain threshold, we will send you a notification directly into your email or phone text system. That's also very possible. Yes. And the next question is, I see. So the next question is, can we make personalized screens? For example, commercial and technical team should not be allowed to see the same screens. I assume that means the dashboards within the Grafana.
Yeah, yes, and you can create different groups and permissions and set up permissions as well in Grafana so that different organizations see different dashboards and data sources. So you can definitely set up permissions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. Another question is, I would want to display aggregated KPIs, for example, daily totals of the energy production. What would be the best approach for calculating these inside TD Engine or by aggregating data in a SQL query? That's a good question. So one way, we know that definitely works is that you can use the stream processing feature within TD Engine to aggregate these data in TD Engine and save that in a separate table. And then later on with Grafana, you can simply query that table within TD Engine for these results to be directly displayed in Grafana. Joe, do you know, is there another way to do this besides this?
And that's sort of what I was thinking, is that it would be aggregated via SQL inside of TD Engine, materialized to some sort of view, right? And then you would query that directly into Grafana.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Another question, is it possible to write Grafana elaborated logs into a database managed TD Engine? Does this question make sense to you, Joe? To database managed.
Also try Grafana elaborated logs into data. So you're looking for Grafana logs into TD Engine. I mean, usually we're going the other way. Maybe we'd have to elaborate on the use case.
Yeah, and then it also, if you have any further questions, if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to send an email directly to me at jfan@tdengine.com. We'll get those questions answered after the session. Another question is, TD Engine based on Docker, is TD Engine based on Docker going to be free in the future? So whatever Joe demonstrated today, it's based on TD Engine open source, so it is free for everyone to use. And Joe also put everything on the GitHub, like the one that he showed you earlier. If you want to link to that, again, send us an email, and we'll send you the links to that. We will also be creating a blog or updating our Grafana technical blog with the detailed setup of those Docker Composer on the GitHub. Everything will be available within that article. So if you're interested, stay tuned to our TD Engine blog page, and we will get everything set up for you, and we'll show you exactly how you can replicate the whole process with the open source version of TD Engine and open source version of Grafana on your local machine. So that's something we will be, it will be very easy for you to configure once you have the link to the GitHub page. Yes. All right, and if you want a copy of today's presentation, also feel free to send me an email. We'll be more than happy to support you with that. And if you have interest in similar webinars in the future, we have in total, I think, at least a dozen or more webinar series, webinars just like today. So it's going to be very educational, very technical, talking about a specific topic. So if you're interested in that, you can scan the QR code or just search TD Engine and webinar in Google, go to our page, you can register or sign up for any topics that you're interested in. Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. And thank you, Joe, for the very informative presentation and demo. And we'll keep the series going, and we'll hopefully bring some value to the audience out there. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.